Crumb-Topped. Today, we are tackling one of the most comforting, most requested desserts of all time, the Dutch apple pie. Now, this isn't your grandma's traditional double-crust pie. This is the Dutch version, which means we get a rich, gooey apple filling topped with a buttery, cinnamon streusel crumb. It's the perfect combination of textures, and honestly, once you try this crumb topping, you'll never go back. This recipe is simple, but it delivers massive flavor. We are aiming for those tender, spiced apples and that satisfying crunch on top, ready to get baking. Let's dive right into the ingredients and preparation. First things first, the crust. While some Dutch apple pies start with a homemade pastry, we are keeping things simple today and using a store-bought 9-inch pie crust, pre-made and ready to go. You can certainly make your own if you prefer. But the star of this show is truly the topping and the filling. If you are using a frozen crust, make sure it's thawed according to the package directions. We need to blind bake this lightly later on, so just set that crust aside for now while we focus on the filling. The filling is where the magic happens. You need about 6 to 7 medium-sized apples. For apple pie, the type of apple really matters. You want an apple that holds its shape when baked. So steer clear of softer varieties like Macintosh. I always recommend using a mix of Granny Smith because they provide that necessary tartness, combined with a sweeter apple like Honeycrisp, Gala, or Fuji. This balance gives you complexity, a sweet and tart dynamic that cuts through the richness of the crumb topping. So, peel, core, and slice those apples into roughly 1/4-inch slices. Don't slice them too thin, or they'll turn to mush. We want definition. Once your apples are sliced, toss them gently in a large bowl. Now we add the spices and the thickening agents. For this amount of apples, you'll need about 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. Adjust this based on how sweet your apples are. 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, which will help thicken the juices, and the necessary spices, 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and just a tiny pinch of ground cloves for depth. Gently mix all of this together with a rubber spatula until the apples are evenly coated. Try not to break the apple slices. You want the sugar and flour mixture to cling to the apples, ensuring every bite is perfectly seasoned and the pie sets beautifully when cooled. A quick optional tip here. I like to add about a teaspoon of fresh lemon juice to the apple mixture. Lemon juice brightens the flavor and prevents the apples from browning too quickly while you re-preparing the rest of the pie. Set this filling mixture aside for about 10 minutes. This resting time allows the sugar to start pulling the moisture out of the apples, creating a nice syrupy base right in the bowl before we even start baking. This step is crucial for a perfectly set pie. While the filling is resting, let's pre-bake or blind bake our pie crust. Preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Blind baking prevents the bottom crust from getting soggy, which is the absolute worst outcome for any pie. Prick the bottom and sides of the crust all over with a fork. This allows steam to escape so the crust doesn't puff up. Line the crust with parchment paper and fill it with pie weights, dried beans, or rice, for about 12 to 15 minutes, or until the just stay. We are only partially baking it, so don't let it brown too much. Remove the weights and the paper and let the crust cool slightly before adding the filling. Now, the star of the show, the streusel crumb topping. This is what sets Dutch apple pie apart. It's ridiculously easy and so much more satisfying than a top crust. In a medium bowl, combine 1½ cups of all-purpose flour. 3/4 cup of packed light brown sugar. The brown sugar is key here because it adds that molasses depth and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Whisk these dry ingredients together thoroughly. Next, we incorporate the fat, 1 stick or ½ cup of cold, unsalted butter. Het meest bekoeld. Cut the butter into small cubes and then using a pastry blender or, honestly, just your fingertips, work the butter into the flour mixture. You want to work quickly so the butter doesn't melt. We are looking for a texture that resembles coarse crumbs like wet sand or small peas. The cold butter pockets are what create that beautiful, flaky crunch when the streusel bakes. If you overwork it, you'll end up with a paste, and we want crumbs. Some people like to add chopped pecans or walnuts to their streusel for extra texture, and that's a fantastic optional addition if you're a nut fan. Okay, assembly time. Pour your apple filling, along with any accumulated juices in the bowl, directly into your partially baked pie shell. Pile the apples high, mounting them slightly in the center, as they will shrink down while baking. Then, evenly distribute that glorious streusel topping all over the surface of the apples. Don't press it down, just let it sit loosely on top. We want maximum texture. Place the pie on a baking sheet to catch any drips that might occur, and slide it into your preheated 375-degree oven. Now, here's the trick to baking a perfect pie. It needs time, and it needs monitoring. We will bake this for about 50 to 60 minutes. After about 30 minutes, if you notice the streusel topping is browning too quickly, loosely cover the edges of the pie with aluminum foil to prevent burning. The pie is done when the apples are tender. You can test them gently with a knife through the crumb. The crust is golden brown, and the filling juices are visibly bubbling up through the streusel. Those bubbles mean the thickener has done its job. Once it's perfectly baked, remove the pie from the oven, and here is the hardest part, waiting. Do not slice this pie immediately. It needs to cool completely at least 3 to 4 hours, or ideally until it reaches room temperature. This cooling period allows the flour and the pectin in the apples to fully set the filling. If you cut it too soon, the filling will run everywhere, and you'll have a puddle instead of a slice. Patience truly pays off here. Once cooled, serve this Dutch apple pie warm or at room temperature. It's incredible on its own, but let's be honest, it's begging for a scoop of vanilla, bean ice cream, or a dollop of fresh whipped cream. That warm, spicy filling combined with the cold, creamy ice cream and the crunchy streusel is absolute heaven. And there you have it, the perfect Dutch apple pie recipe. This pie is a crowd pleaser and a perfect comfort food staple. If you enjoyed this video and are ready to try this recipe, hit that like button and subscribe for more classic baking tutorials. Let me know in the comments what your favorite pie-apple combination is. Thanks for watching. Happy baking, and I'll see you in the next video.